What's going on, Dolphins? It is your boy Dillon, and I got some articles and some things that I want to talk about and read through today regarding this ongoing conversation about what the Dolphins are going to be doing at quarterback, at the quarterback position, how they're going to address it. Are they going to address it in the draft? How they're going to address it in the draft, etc., etc., etc. Are they going to trade up? Blah, 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 blah. And so, again, as always, I like to make sure you guys get a ton of different perspectives, etc., and of course all the facts and data. And so there are some things that have been coming out, over the past couple days that I want to get to. So let's get right into it. The first thing I want to talk about is an article from Kyle Krabs. Is a writer that you guys know that I generally disagree with. I think that most of the time he says just absolutely absurd, ridiculous things and has ridiculous opinions. But in this case, I actually tend to agree, at least in large part, with what he's saying in this article. Now, what did he have to say? If Dolphins don't like their 2020 quarterback options, what should they do? Okay, so that's if they don't like their options now. Now, let's note, though, that they are apparently in love with, like, a ton of different quarterbacks. So they're apparently in love with Joe Burrow, Tua Tagovailoa, Justin Herbert. We know that they've got the ammunition to trade up anywhere if they want to. They have enough that they could pull off a trade with the Cincinnati Bengals. It would just take a tremendous amount of draft capital to do so. So we know that they can do whatever that they want. Now, there's been tons of speculation on exactly what or who they're going to take. As you guys know, I believe that we're 100% going to take a quarterback. I think that we're going to trade up to get one. I think we're going to end up trading up to the number 3 spot with the Detroit Lions to take Tua Tagovailoa. That is my guess. I've been saying this whole time, though, that the only thing that really matters is what Stephen Ross wants, okay? Because again, this whole fucking last year, everything's been around a quarterback, and all the data points to the Dolphins are going to go get their guy, right? Whoever that may be. I've been saying consistently that I don't necessarily know who it's going to be. But at the end of the day, it's going to be whichever quarterback Stephen Ross wants. And he will spare no expense, because we've seen in the past with him that he thinks that all he can do, or all that's necessary, is to just throw resources at it, and that's going to solve the issue. Okay, let's get into this article, though, because like I said, I think that the Dolphins are going to end up trading up to the number 3 spot to take Tua Tagovailoa. I think that's going to be a disaster in a lot of different ways, if that's what ends up happening. But this is a take that I actually agree with far more. So what did he have to say? Everyone wants the Dolphins to acquire a new franchise quarterback. I wouldn't say everybody, because as you guys know, I don't adhere to the, quarterback is everything, and that you absolutely have to just have an elite quarterback, and you have to chase a guy, and it's everything is predicated. No, it's not. It's a football team with 11 guys on the field. You need to build a good team all together, etc., etc. Just all the data points to what I'm saying being true. Far more quarterbacks taken in round 1 are bust or just average than they are successful. You can get late round quarterbacks, etc., etc. I would never take a quarterback in the first round or the second round, but in round 3 every year I would take, you guys know. So, and there's no shortage of options at the Dolphins' disposal to do it, which can be a problem in its own right. There's a lot of options and a lot of opinions. But pretend for a moment that the Dolphins decide that they feel uncomfortable with Tua Tagovailoa's hip prognosis, and that the team likes but doesn't love Oregon quarterback Justin Herbert. What should this team do? In an absolutely loaded 2020 NFL draft class, there's only one sensible decision for the Dolphins to aspire for. Trade down from 5. Now, as you guys know, again, I would never chase a quarterback. I find it difficult to even trade up for players to begin with. They'd have to be super special, and I tend to steer away from trading up for guys. I don't like chasing players. I like to be more sensible in the way that I do things. So trading back and accumulating more capital, etc., to take more chances, have more picks, as opposed to, quantity, because you never know what the quality is going to be like, right? Sure, you want quality players ultimately. That's the end goal. But when it comes to, the best way to build the team is through the draft, and to have the best chances at being successful in the draft, you need as much, ammo as possible. And obviously you have to be able to evaluate properly, and those two things go hand in hand, but you never know where the quality is going to come from. It's just, there are too many factors that go into it, right? So, more chances is better than less chances. Now, we have tons of chances. Let's see how the Dolphins use them this time around. Because the Dolphins, who are currently on the buyer end of the 2020 quarterback market, can suddenly become the next hot ticket for teams that might want to trade up if the Dolphins flip the switch and become sellers. If Miami wants to open their pick for negotiations for whatever motivations, they're suddenly in the seat the Detroit Lions are currently in. They're in the driver's seat of negotiations. Say a team like the Las Vegas Raiders ultimately does decide to sign Tom Brady, which has been a hot rumor this offseason. There's also been rumors he's going to come to the Dolphins. I personally think he's going to retire if he doesn't go back to the Patriots, but we'll see. Would they probably like to push their chips in and take a win now window? Most likely, yes. The Raiders would greatly benefit from a talent like Derek Brown of Auburn, Isaiah Simmons of Clemson, or Jeff Okudah of Ohio State, and two of the three are likely to be on the board at 5. The fun thought about the Raiders: they own picks 12 and 19 in this year's draft at this point in time. If the Dolphins could coax both out of the Raiders in a trade down, that's not going to happen. The Dolphins and this organization have not proven yet. I mean, I would be surprised, and I'd love to give them credit for it, but they have not proven to be that savvy. In fact, they tend to give away more than what is fair, and have to end up sweetening the pot on their end because of how ridiculous the situation ends up, the situation they put themselves in. But I guess theoretically it's possible, but I find that to be inconceivable. In fact, from my perspective, I don't see the Dolphins trading down at all, because again, I think Stephen Ross is cravenly desperate for a quarterback. I think he firmly believes that he can just throw whatever resources that he has at it. They've literally been telling us, and did it through their actions, setting themselves up to do it. And there's more information and more data that I'll get to in a little bit that also helps to continue to bolster that. They're going to trade up. If they don't, it'll be a massive shocker, and I would love to give them credit for it. If they don't trade up and just stay put, I'll give them credit for that. I'll also be nuanced about it and give you a nuanced opinion and analysis based off of who they take and how they handle that. If they trade down, they'll get more credit, so I'd love to give them that. I just don't see it being a conceivable notion that they're going to trade down when you take all of the data into account. All right, let's continue. And if Miami, if Miami executed this deal to move away from Tagovailoa, there's an outside chance Justin Herbert might still be on the board at 12, with the Dolphins sitting in front of the next slew of quarterback-hungry teams in Indianapolis and Tampa Bay, who picked 13th and 14th respectively. But the Chargers, the Panthers, the Bengals, the Lions, all of those are teams that could take quarterbacks. So if we drop to 12th, then there's a good chance that none of those quarterbacks would even be on the board. There's a chance that Joe Burrow, Tua Tagovailoa, Justin Herbert, maybe even Jordan Love are all off the board by the time the Dolphins would get to 12, if that's what they did. So yes, I wouldn't care personally about getting one of those quarterbacks. So if they could coax, everybody would because if that ended up being their plan, and they're like, yeah, maybe we could still get Justin Herbert, and maybe we could have our cake and eat it too, and show everybody that we're not so cravenly desperate, and we're gonna move back and be smart, but then we're gonna try and take Justin Herbert at 12 because we think he'll be there, blah 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 blah, and then he ends up not being there, and then we lose our quarterback. Everybody's gonna lose their fucking minds and pull their hair out. I'm gonna be like, cool, well, we have 2 extra first round picks. That gives us more chances to fill out the rest of the team, but everybody's gonna lose their shit. So anyway, we'll see what happens. It depends, though. That's my point. Is my overarching point here is it just totally depends on the facts, the data, the circumstance, and the nuance of each and every situation. It's not that crazy. If Detroit keeps Matt Stafford, the Dolphins execute a trade back from 5, the Chargers draft Tagovailoa, and the Panthers keep Cam Newton, which I don't think is going to happen. The Matt Stafford thing, I don't know how that's gonna turn out. I think Cam's probably out of Carolina, but there are tons of teams that could fucking opt to go for a quarterback. Anyway, where's Herbert going to go? Arizona, Cleveland, and New York. The Jets, that is, don't need quarterbacks, leaving Jacksonville as the only possibility threat barring a trade. And so the Jacksonville Jaguars could take him, right? Or somebody could trade up in front of us. That's always possible too. There are just so many more ways for these things to go wrong than to go right. Like, it's just, anyway. From there, Miami could feasibly draft Herbert, but again, I wouldn't care about missing on the quarterback, but it would just be, anyway. From there, Miami could feasibly draft Herbert or even try to coax up another frenzy of trade negotiations for anyone aspiring to land the Oregon passer for themselves. Look, they're not this fucking bright. They're not this fucking savvy, or at least they haven't proven to be to this point, especially under the leadership of Stephen Ross. And dude, he's fucking blinded, man. He's got his goddamn eyes set on just getting a quarterback. None of this is going to happen. He's going to trade up to go get somebody. Okay? He's going to overextend. He's going to just dump as many resources as he feels necessary, which is going to be a lot to get a guy, and it's going to backfire tremendously. This is my perspective, and to be fair, a lot of this still has to play out, but that is my perspective, and that is how I see things going. This, of course, only comes to reality if the Dolphins are put off by the prognosis of Tua Tagovailoa's hip and don't love Justin Herbert. It's too soon to say whether or not either of those things are factual, but it is a scenario the Dolphins should prep for in the event that they find themselves put off by this group of quarterbacks and looking to defer their investment for another season. Look, they might take a quarterback high in next year's draft after they end up having a disappointing season and then pick high again. But they're going to take a quarterback this year too. Again, my guess is they're going to trade to number 3 with the Detroit Lions, take Tua Tagovailoa. They're going to think that they're going to be able to adequately address things like the offensive line by being big spenders in free agency, and then likely, because of the glowing prognosis that he's been given to this point, and I suspect will continue to be given, if for no other reason than just to create the hype around the circus that's been created around it, then they're going to be like, well, he's healthy enough, and look, he's moving around well in training camp and stuff like that. We're going to throw him into the fire immediately. And it's going to backfire. And then they're going to... I hope this doesn't happen. This would be like the absolute worst case scenario. So God forbid, knock on wood, whatever. But if they do all of that, trade away a bunch of draft capital to go up and get Tua Tagovailoa, big spenders in free agency and blow through the cap space, mishandle the draft, don't adequately, address the team needs across the board, and then end up having a disappointing season. But, in that season, part of it being disappointing is because Tua gets hurt again. Well, I mean, that's the worst, absolute worst possible situation you could be in. And especially if it's, then at that point, looked at as potentially career-ending, whatever. I mean, what if the hip again, right? What if it's the hip again or something like that, right? So it's just too risky. It's too risky. And then if he got hurt again, that would just be the absolute worst situation the Dolphins could be in. Because then what? Then are you going to take a first-round quarterback the next year? I mean, it's just an absolute fucking waste. Anyway, next is a Bleacher Report article. An AFC exec, there's a lot of things to nitpick about Tua. Okay, well, that's interesting. Durability question marks could be enough to scare some teams away from drafting Alabama quarterback Tua Tagovailoa. If you're going to bet your job on drafting him, you better be damn sure that he checks every other box, because there's a lot of things to nitpick on with this guy. Most importantly, the injuries. An AFC executive said, per Tom Pelissero of NFL.com, he's a 6-foot quarterback who's 230 pounds with a dislocated hip, and it just doesn't add up. Not to mention surgery on both ankles as well. And he's shown to be very injury prone, and he hasn't even gotten to the NFL yet, where it's going to ratchet up a ton. And then if he gets put on a team where the protection is not anywhere near adequate and he doesn't have a running game to help balance it out, it's just going to be, it just spells unmitigated disaster. He's a smaller quarterback that is tremendously injury prone. So that's something to keep in mind if the Dolphins do end up trading up and getting the guy. And something I've been talking about a lot throughout this entire process. The dislocated hip ended Tagovailoa's 2019 season prematurely, but other issues have also held him back. As Pelissero noted, the quarterback has also had 2 different ankle surgeries over the past 2 years, plus injuries in his finger and knee. It's limited him to just 24 starts in his career after coming off the bench in his freshman season. He's thrown just 684 pass attempts in 3 seasons, while LSU quarterback Joe Burrow had 527 pass attempts in 2019 alone. Tagovailoa has proved himself when he's on the field, totaling 33 touchdowns and just 3 interceptions in 9 games this past season. He completed 71.4% of his passes and led the nation with a 206.9 efficiency rating. Now look, again, I'm not arguing against the kid's talent or ability. There's just way more other concerns. The injuries are massively important when talking about him, right? And especially in the context of where he's going to end up if he comes to the Miami Dolphins. Okay? Everybody, like last year when we traded for Rosen, right? Everybody's like, yeah, blah, 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 he's going to be our savior. But he was put in the same shit situation that he was in Arizona, and I was proven right. He wasn't going to perform well, right, etc., because he proved that he, behind a terrible offensive line, etc., not to mention he actually had competition in that situation. He didn't in Arizona his first year, right? He didn't have somebody else to potentially even take that spot. So, I mean, there's a lot. Every situation is unique, and you have to be nuanced about it, and you have to take all the data and information into account if you're going to have adequate analysis. However, the injuries and his lack of size could create significant concern for NFL teams. An off-injured quarterback can obviously set back an organization, as the Indianapolis Colts saw with Andrew Luck, until he surprisingly retired before the 2019 season. The quarterback has reportedly recovered well from his hip injury, with Ian Rappaport of NFL Network reporting his CT scan earlier this month was as positive as possible. And see, and that's the thing. With the way that the media has been framing his recovery, oh, he's super ahead of schedule and he's as positive as possible, right? Everything that they've been saying, I mean, there are people who are going to be skeptical for sure, but somebody who's cravenly desperate, like I believe Stephen Ross is, might look at that and be like, oh, that's it. That's what I need to know. He's good to go. He's super special. He's going to be our Patrick Mahomes. We're not going to build a team around him anywhere near adequate, but he's going to be our Patrick Mahomes, and he's going to raise this team onto his shoulders all by himself, despite being small and injury prone, and then probably get mauled behind a non-existent offensive line. Well, whatever. Okay. Still, it might not be enough to convince teams to take a chance on the talented player. Somebody's going to do it. Somebody's going to do it. There's no way that he's going to get out of the top 10. I find that, I mean, it's possible. To be fair, of course it's possible. I just see it to be rather inconceivable because of his talent level. And somebody's going to be, willing to take that flyer. All right. And so the last thing that I really just want to add into this whole conversation is there have been some tweets and some reports out there that the Dolphins are already very active, right? An NFC GM tells me, this is Mike Freeman, a tweet from him. NFC GM tells me Dolphins are already extremely active in talking with other teams. GM, they're shaping up to be among the biggest factors in this draft. Okay? Now, people like Dudley Do Wrong have said, I haven't watched some of his more recent stuff, so I don't know if he's changed his tune like he often does, but he said recently in one of his videos that the Dolphins are just like absolutely not going to trade up. He doesn't believe it, just like he didn't believe the Dolphins were tanking, even though they literally did all of the key hallmarks of tanking, and the fact that they won 5 games is absolutely irrelevant. It doesn't matter at all. and, you know, they're just absolutely not going to trade up to go get a quarterback. Okay, well, you know, it's around the corner, right? We're about to hit March. Free agency's about to fucking hit. So what happens then? What if they end up being big spenders in free agency, just like they said they were going to be? What if all the data up to this point that points to them being big players in the draft and trading up to get a quarterback, what if they do exactly that? Then what? Anyway, now again, to be fair, maybe they don't. I hope they don't. I would personally rather them trade down like we talked about in that previous article. I would rather see them do something smart like that, and I hope to, you know, whatever. I really hope that they prove me wrong and they turn this team around. So far, the overwhelming amount of data that we have points to the exact opposite. But okay, we'll have to wait and see it plays out. Free agency is literally around the corner. The draft is after that. Let's see what they do. Alright guys, I'm going to get up out of here. I hope you guys enjoy my videos and perspective. If you do, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you hit the bell if you want to get the alerts for my videos. Share my channel and videos with your friends and family. Leave your questions, comments, and concerns down in the comment section. And of course, as always, make sure you follow me on Twitter at Dillon Tartaro. And with that, I am out. I'll see y'all soon. Phins up.